This is the BBC. For details of our complete range of programmes, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
Welcome to the latest global news compiled in the early hours of the morning on Sunday the 24th of September. I'm Luke Jones with a selection of highlights from across the BBC World Service news. Coming up, US bombers and fighter jets fly over international waters east of North Korea. And shortly afterwards, North Korea's foreign minister tells the UN his country has the right to have nuclear weapons and issued this threat to President Trump.
I will make the man holding the prerogative of supreme command in the US pay dearly for his speech, calling for the total destruction of the DPRK.
The devastation left by Hurricane Maria continues to bring misery.
Think of your worst nightmare, and there it is, no power. The reservoirs of drinking water have been depleted. Diesel is very quickly running out.
How the controversial independence referendum in Iraqi Kurdistan has become a rallying call for Kurds around the world. And clothes make the man. The Royal Shakespeare Company sells off thousands of items from its costume wardrobe. We begin in North Korea and a show of military force by the United States. On Saturday, American bomber planes escorted by fighter jets flew over waters east of North Korea, escalating already sky-high tensions between the two countries. While at the UN, North Korea's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho called President Trump a megalomaniac and defended his country's right to have nuclear weapons. My colleague Julian Marshall spoke to the BBC's Rithala Shah, who's in New York.
After the war of words, Julian, that's raged this week between North Korea and the US, there was a certain amount of anticipation about what might be in this speech today. Bear in mind that Ri Yong-ho is an experienced diplomat and he's said to be articulate and well connected. But in today's speech to the UN, he certainly let rip. I was in the hall when Mr. Ri was speaking and he spoke for longer than the allotted 15 minutes. He spoke pretty calmly, not in that melodramatic style of that newsreader we often hear declaring North Korean news, but he was sweating profusely, I have to say. And he started by saying that given that President Trump had used violent words in his speech at the UN, that Mr. Ri said he was going to respond in a similar tone, and he certainly lived up to his own billing. What followed was a tirade of threats and insults. Perhaps the most chilling moment came when Mr. Ri said that Donald Trump had made the visit of what he called our rockets to the entire US mainland inevitable by calling the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man. And he went on to say that Mr. Trump was mentally deranged and full of megalomania. And he said the US president would pay dearly for his speech, in which he'd said, of course, that he'd totally destroy North Korea if the US was forced to defend itself or its allies.
자살 공격을 시작한 것은 다름 아닌 트럼프입니다. 이 공격 때문에 미국 땅의 무고한 생명들이
None other than Trump himself is on a suicide mission. In case innocent lives are harmed because of this suicide attack, Trump will be held totally responsible. The respected supreme leader of the DPRK, Comrade Kim Jong-un, stated as a man representing the DPRK and on behalf of the dignity and the honour of my state, the people and my own, I will make the man holding the prerogative of supreme command in the US pay dearly for his speech, calling for the total destruction of the DPRK. Trump might not be aware what he uttered from his mouth, but we will make sure he bears consequences far beyond his words, far beyond the scope of what he can handle, even if he is ready to do so.
And it wasn't just the US that came in for a bashing. All of America's allies were in North Korea's sights, with South Korea and Japan dubbed as US stooges. And the North Korean foreign minister kept stressing that it was vital for North Korea to have nuclear weapons in self-defense. And it was a point that he made over and over again. And he was pretty defiant in the face of the new, tougher sanctions, which you may remember were imposed by the UN Security Council following North Korea's last nuclear test at the beginning of this month. And they were tightened again this week by the US. Now, Mr. Ri repeated that the restrictions wouldn't make the country stop its nuclear development.
점을 눈앞에 두고 있는 우리 공화국이
Through such a prolonged and arduous struggle, now we are finally only a few steps away from the final gate of completion of the state nuclear force. It is only a forlorn hope to consider any chance that the DPRK would be shaken an inch or change its course due to the harshest sanctions by the hostile forces.
And Julian, there was quite an odd moment when Mr. Rhee was almost poetic describing North Korea's testing of intercontinental missiles. And of course, it's this testing that's got everybody so jittery. But he talked about them flying over the blue sky and the tremendous explosion that had been recorded on the planet.
Rita, who though was, do you think, his speech directed at? Because from what I could see, the chamber was pretty empty.
It got fuller, actually, I have to say. I'd been sitting there for some time and more people definitely came in for this speech, but it is the end of what was a very long week here at the UN. And it is interesting that his speech came towards the end of that week. You can't help wondering whether there was a reason why he was moved from Friday to Saturday when there were far fewer people around. I don't know. I have no proof of that, of why that might have happened, but it is interesting. I think his speech was definitely aimed at the global audience. He talked about the United States. He mentioned South Korea and Japan. He kept talking about the United States allies. This was a speech for everybody out there who, from North Korea's point of view, has lined up, reined themselves against North Korea and their nuclear project. And of course, today you have seen this show of strength from the United States. America hasn't felt that it could simply sit back and let this speech happen. The Pentagon said that US bombers flew close to North Korea's east coast, and they were essentially demonstrating, and the Pentagon pretty much said this in a statement, the military options that are available to them to defeat any threat. They felt they had to be seen to be doing something. And I think that in their statement, the Pentagon went on, they wanted to underscore the seriousness with which the US takes North Korea's reckless behaviour and grave